Rock DIY or do it you. Doing an oil change on a 2010 Ford F150 Platinum. And in this case, because there's a lift on it, I don't need a floor jack or ramps to do this oil change. I can just crawl up underneath it, make sure I got the parking brake on, chock box under the wheels, and do the oil change. I have my oil filter wrench, a funnel, wrench and socket set, a new filter. This one's an STP S2, and then I've got 5 weight 20 oil, 10 quarts, and then I also have my oil change pan. I also have rags, gloves, and as I already mentioned, chock blocks to put behind the wheels. Here's the engine oil drain plug, 15 millimeter. The only thing about draining the oil is that the sway bar is right here, so when the oil comes out, it typically hits this sway bar and goes all over the place. See what happens this time. Always unscrew the bolt while pressing it against the pan to prevent it from dripping before I actually get it off, and then just pull the bolt off when I think when it's completely unthreaded. So here we go. It wasn't as bad, but still got on the sway bar. The oil pan drain bolt is 15 millimeter. Now the fun part of the oil change, removing the oil filter. And there's a plastic piece right here that goes down towards the back of the car and towards the front of the car. So when you take the filter off, oil can go both directions, so you got to make sure your oil pan is in just the right position. And sometimes the oil just chooses to go where it wants to go. But I also have when the lift kit was put on the truck, there's a bracket down there where the oil seems to want to camp out after an oil change. So I gotta make sure I get all that oil out of there after I get done. Definitely something you want to be aware of whenever you do an oil change is there's supposed to be a rubber gasket right here, and instead of coming off with the filter, it stayed on the engine block. The last thing you want to happen is the one that's still stuck on the engine block, you go to put your new one in and it's got a gasket on it. You attach it, and when your oil pressure goes up, could potentially have the seal between the two gaskets blow, and the next thing you know, you got oil everywhere and smoke. You'll be able to see it, but there's where the gasket is still stuck to the engine block. So that needs to come off before putting the new oil filter on. You can see here where the new filter has the seal on it, and then the one that I just took off doesn't have the seal on it because it's still stuck to the engine block. Took the oil filter gasket or O-ring off the engine block so that I could put the new oil filter on. And the new oil filter's on. I typically hand tighten it as far as possible and then give it a half turn to a full turn, and this is the way I've always done it. I've never had a problem with it leaking or anything. I know every time I do an oil change on the F-150 that I can go ahead and just pour the first 5 quarts straight in without having to worry about checking the dipstick. This has a 5.4 liter engine, so the oil capacity on it is 7 quarts. Old filter was taken off, new filter was put on, new oil was put in, and just a caution on the oil is just because the manual says 7 quarts, I wouldn't rush to just pour 7 quarts in it because there's all kinds of nooks and crannies in the engine that hold oil. So unless you know exactly what came out of it, I wouldn't rush to put 7 quarts in it. Just put the first 5 in and then check the dipstick and then add as you see fit. Please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks again.